In this video help, I'm going to be covering let's click on it, the trip planner screen. Let's go there. In the trip planner, this is a consolidated screen where there's a lot of information being managed within one screen. In the past application, this would probably be about 6 different screens. One of the things that's nice about the new Pro version is everything is consolidated so you can see just about anything you want on one screen. Now, what I'm going to start out by saying is that when you add the first record or add a new record to this screen, you'll use the do action and come up here and say add new record, and then you'd have a blank record. Now the current record obviously is a sample record where we put in information so that you'd have something to view during this presentation. Now you can see within this do action, you can go to the next record, the prior record, and if you're way down the list of records, you can click on the first record. If you want to search, which is the fastest way to find information, be aware that you can only search in the first set of information, which is over on this side of the screen. You cannot do searches within a portal, and these are multi-line records. This is 2 records, and there's a number of records that can be added to each one of these portals, including the ones that pop up on service and supplies. So you can only do the searches within this area over here, which basically on this screen is the base information for the trip summary. Now, if you're going to perform the find, what you would do is start the find by clicking in, and all the fields will be emptied on the screen, and there'll be a question mark in each field. When you want to look for something, you could say take the day of the trip and maybe departing from. That would give you this record for this particular trip. Now, this is a parent record, so this is a starting of a trip where you're going from one location and you're visiting many things. And say, for example, I'm leaving Sedona and I'm going to Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is my final destination on my trip. Upon my return, then we'd start a new record for the next trip. So each trip summary has its own set of a start and final destination and then return. So if you're going to create a new set of records for a new trip, then you would add a new record. It would give you the next sequential number, and then you would fill in the information over here on this side to show the starting location, the depart time, and then your starting mileage. When you return, you'd put in the return mileage, and it would calculate the summary of miles. Let's go back over and show you that there is also on this screen, when you do the perform find, you start it, then you click perform find once you put the data in your blank field. That will bring up the records that you may want to use for this information in the parent screen. It's slightly different when you're in other screens where you're in a child screen, and the parent screen has the main record, and they have subsets of maybe 1 to multiple records. To show a list view of this particular screen for the different trips that you have managed over a period of time, you would click on the list view. If you want to show and hide the menus, which are at the top and bottom of the screen, for example, on the desktop, Mac PC, or the iPad versions or the cloud version of this app, you would click on the show hide menus, and what that would do is hide or open the menus so that you can see navigate those. When you're on something like the iPad, you probably want to hide the menus so it's easier to visualize the screen. You can visit the support site by clicking on this screen, and then if you're running video help for the particular screen you're on, click this for showing the video help, and that would bring up the video like the one you're watching right now. Now let's cover this screen so that we have all the information for it. You do have the application map where you can navigate around the application by clicking on the map and going to any screen in the application. This is a very quick way to navigate. All the things that you have on the screen should supplement the screen to where you do not need to have menu bars at the top and bottom of the screen during the usage of this application. This first thing we're going to be looking at is stops along the way. And stops along the way is a particular set of records for this parent record where you're going to be moving in from one location to the next, with the final destination being Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I'm going to stop in Winslow. I'm going to look at the planned stop. It's going to be the Meteor Crater State Park, and that's the primary reason for stopping along the way. And it is 68.5 miles from there, from the location of Sedona. And the way I can find that out is I'm using Google Maps to get the actual directions, and then I'm looking at what the actual mileage should be as far as where I'm going. In this particular case, the directions I have show that I'm 71 miles. When I arrived, I had 71 miles on my odometer. I put in the starting mileage that was equal to where I started from in Sedona, and what it did is when I got to the location where I was going, I put my actual odometer reading in, and then it calculates how many miles I actually went. So I went slightly more than the 68.5. It also summarizes the amount of miles that were traveled for all the records during this trip. On this record, it summarizes the miles where you see I've gone 101 miles. This also shows that on my way to Albuquerque, I stopped at an Indian reservation store and did some shopping. And that particular location was 30 miles away from where I stopped here. And I just basically added 30 miles, or the odometer reading, when I got to the reservation store, and it calculated and told me I went 30 miles from this location. It's actually pretty straightforward. Now, over here you'll see there's a postage stamp size picture of the location going to the crater where I want to go. And if I click the large view, it'll pop up and show me an image that I add. And the way you add an image is to go over to the actual screen area over here. And when you click on it, it's going to allow you to insert a picture or a QuickTime video. And you can actually, now videos are going to take some hard drive space on your device, so you have to be aware of that. But you can insert a picture from either the hard drive or, on the case of the iPad, from the library photos. You would put it right into this location. Now, if you click on this on the hard drive, it's going to pop up a show files dialog where you can pick through the files and pick the one you want. It'll insert it into this the screen. Now, there is a portal that is connected to this, and what happens if you want to see the individual portal record, which we're going to cover later, you would click on this and it would take you to the portal record for this particular stop along the way. The stop duration was 3 hours that we spent at the crater and took the tour, and in this case you can make notes and comments. In this area there's a larger view of the notes that will show up in the actual portal, so you can make extensive notes if you want to. Now, the next thing we're going to be viewing after we're leaving the stops along the way is going to be the supplies manager. And what this is called a popover. You'll notice that it highlights. If I click on it, it's going to bring up a record. And what it does, it says this is the supply manager. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting in items that are important for me to have either when I start before I leave the first location, and or things that I have to accomplish as far as supplying items within the RV that need to go with me. And in this case, I wanted to have a shovel. I wanted to have fuel for my barbecue gas starter. I also wanted water bottles, and I wanted to fill the water tank for the onboard the RV. It's a 100-gallon tank. I only had 10 remaining, so I need to put in 90 gallons to fill it all the way up. And you can see here, this is the next item. I have one fire bottle starter that I need during the trip because I'm not going to need that much barbecue. I have 0 on hand, so I have to get one, and my status is to buy one. So I need to buy one. The next one is the tools, the shovel. I had one. I wanted to make sure I have it on hand, and I checked my RV before I left, and I made sure that I don't need any, and that was okay. And on the water bottles, I wanted 48 of them on hand. I have 2 left, so I needed to get 46 more or thereabouts, and that means I got to buy some. Now you can continue this down this particular portal until you have all your items in there, and then when you want to see the individual items, you click on the portal, and when you go to the portal, there's also a list view that shows all these items as well. As before, if you click off of this area, it will hide that particular screen. The next one is trip accommodations. Now this could be if you're traveling and decide to stay at a hotel and just park your RV for one night, or if you're going to an RV center or something where you have a reservation set up and you've done the reservations along the way, then you would want to add the information for the reservations, the type of accommodations, you want full hookups, the date that you're supposed to be there. If you have reservations, you know what check-in time is. If you had to put a deposit down to hold it, you can put that in the deposit. The night rate is 38. And in this case, they're going to stay 2 nights, and it calculates that for you. The cost of the stay will be 76. If you have to do tax or tax are included in it, add that into your night rate so that when it calculates this, it's going to go ahead and give you that plus tax. There's a depart time and depart date that you're going to be leaving. And what you would do in this area, and all this on this screen, is replace the data that's in the sample record with your own data and change out the pictures. And in the same way, add your records as far as the accommodations that are along the way. For example, in this screen, if I were going to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and that was going to be my overnight, then I would have my reservations for Albuquerque on that same night that matches the 21st. And if I'm going to stay there from the 21st to the 23rd, then I would have my duration in there as far as the time I'm going to be there. And in this screen, there's a place to put notes as well in the portal. The next thing we're going to be looking at is a service manager. This is a as required service manager. This could be before you leave, you schedule an oil change in this particular case. And along the way, if you had a problem where there was unscheduled service and you had to repair a rear tire was leaking and you had to get a patch put on it, then you would add that. By adding the parts and labor, it summarizes your cost for parts and labor and then the sum for the services along the way. Now, this can be a summary for all services that you had to provide regardless of the trip that you're on, and that's done in the list view for the service manager, and you can actually do a date range to pull up only the data for the date range for a trip, or it could be, for example, if you wanted to look at your costs for any date period due to a date range, you can do that, and I can explain how that is done later when we get to that point. The next thing, you see the summaries of the information that are from the records above here on this record. The next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to look at the expense manager. Now, obviously, service and accommodations are their own, and what we've done is we split these out so you can see how they fit as far as your costs and your expenses. Now, if you wish to, you can summarize the expenses in the expense manager that include both the service and the accommodations and anything you purchase for supplies. And purchase for supplies in this particular case was covered. So on the day before we a couple of days before we traveled, we did an expense time for a thing for food and supplies for expense type. We paid for groceries at Walmart, and it was $235.50 for the items that we needed to put on board the RV to go with us, which included all the items in the supplies. And that's the things that we added. We could just add another record if we wanted to that could add the accommodations if that's the way you want to manage your expenses. But this would break it out separately if you wanted to see it for just reservations and examples of your stay. Now, if you're at a location and you're buying things, say for example, at an RV park, and you want to track those, you should track those in the expenses area and just cover your expenses as far as the accommodation and the space rental when you're at the location. Again, this area is also summarized for your expenses, and there is a list view that summarizes the expenses so you can print it out if you need to. There is a place for notes. When you click up here, you can add notes for particular things, maybe the things you actually purchased while you were in the store, or you can make a shopping list in here based on the supplies you need. That way, when you're in the store, you could use your iPad or to pop up all the things that you need to shop for and make sure that you get everything that you need. The same thing goes for the portal. You can go to the portal. It has your notes in there so you can review them if you need to. As you're traveling along the way, the expenses, you can accumulate them as you're going to see what your running cost is, and also your services and supplies as far as those are concerned. Now, this is a pretty comprehensive screen. There's a lot here. So if you have questions, it's best to go ahead and contact me through the support site, and I can offer you any questions and answers that you need to contact me for. Thank you.